Are you frustrated with Faye? You're not alone, but power creep has always been a thing, so what's different now? Let's talk about why things are so infuriating and what you can do about it. But first, in the comments, I want to know the hero that is driving you the most insane right now. Fire Emblem Heroes has always had this knack for creating these uber villains that you need to pay to get something to defeat them. And I wanted to go back and look at the most frustrating ones of the last couple years, and this is what I came up with. The commonality that I found is the dual phase nature of them. Even back to Legendary Chrom, if you remember, he had a very good enemy phase just because you could speed stack him, and that made him incredibly difficult to defeat in Arena. I don't need to tell you about the dual phase nature of Edelgard, and Seliph had that miracle that was just maddening, and he was so hard to outspeed. So what are our current benchmarks? Duo Sanaki is a top-tier nuke with a brave weapon, piercing, and an insane amount of damage output. The thing that really gets you though is it is so hard to kill this unit back once they attack into you. She has so much damage reduction on top of that you need piercing in order to take care of her, and that's not on a whole lot of tanks right now. It makes it very frustrating because it is very hard to deal with this unit without getting the latest and greatest thing. If we move on to Duo Byleth, this is a unit with the highest bulk in the game, and in his PRF he has Piercing, Scowl, Null Counter Disrupt, and DC. Often it requires multiple units to kill this thing, and there aren't a whole lot of weaknesses because Null Counter Disrupt means that your usual things that you could take down some of these tanks don't exist. The next piece to this is just how quickly things are expiring. I can't even tell you to go invest in a Duo Byleth, the most insane unit we have right now, because if you look back at Brave Corrin, that took 4 months from her to go to top tier to being bumped down. That is not a short amount of time. If we look at nukes, it's been even more insane. I thought when Claude came out that there was no way that you were going to see something better for at least 3 or 4 months. 2 months later, we had Duo Sanaki. Then you have Gale Force units. And this is a little different because I think Gulveg is definitely still a good unit, but 4 months, and I've played with both of these units, Winter Edelgard is a significant upgrade. So I want to talk about solutions, but first off, if you're liking the content, please hit that button. It helps the channel out a ton. Let's talk about what IS can do for us, and vertical progression is the first area we need to discuss. Oblivion talks about this a ton, and if you're familiar with World of Warcraft, essentially every time they increase the level cap, that is vertical progression. In terms of Faye, you can look at old refines, and here is Ike with 3 things total after his refine. You bump that to Duo Byleth, and we get just a monstrous amount of things, and you can see this as units go on, and we have pages and pages of descriptions. Things get more complex, harder to follow, and this kind of snowballs into what we've been seeing lately. What we really want to see is more of the horizontal progression, and if you think about the heyday of this game, it's that period right after Arena's reign and Aetherade steps in, and you have all sorts of new things that suddenly can enter the game. Dragback is a great example, but we also have little things like Pawns of Loki with high HP units being prioritized, or even Seer Snare where you have units that suddenly can't use a duo skill. These are all things that we like to see because we get to use more parts of our barracks without making things just increasingly stronger and stronger and stronger. It's why I'm so excited about this new game mode that I hope will eventually get here. The biggest thing I want to introduce to you is looking at systems as opposed to individual units. You're building up a team with your main component as a swappable unit. You can look at this with tanks with things like Veil and even Attuned Peony, who gives so many effects to your unit. Once you invest in units like that, you can have swappable Omni tanks that as they come out, you grab a one-off and they're still very good and function in your team, plus you get to play with the latest and greatest toys. It means things are a little less frustrating. For player phase, you have Asker and Attuned Triandra, who I think is really slept on. Attuned Triandra can actually function as a Gale Force unit and adds extra damage to your unit to really take down some of these very bulky tanks. Ketria Balls have been the meta for so long in Summoner Duels, and when you build around her, you can plug and play the latest nuke and make your team look very fresh. When you invest in units like Chrom or Asker, or especially Thor right now, you can have a team that has swappable components that you put in the latest duo and go therefore and conquer. Arena is a little simpler, and that is just building around duo units. They are the 6-star units, they score very well for a long time. Chrom is still a top tier scoring unit, an excellent support, and an excellent combat unit. When we look at the expiration for these heroes, it is drastically different. You look at Uber tanks, where we had 4 months between the top tier Corrin dropping down and giving way to Byleth, whereas you had Katria have 30 months of reigning supreme before the new Ruse 4 skill came out. When we look at nukes, you had 2 months between Claude and Sanaki, whereas Elamine, the ultimate support, had 18 months before Freyr dethroned her. When you look at Gale Force gods, you have 4 months between the newest, latest, and greatest. If you look at Peony, you had 46 months between her mythic version and her attuned version, which is really where I start to see her fall off. In general, investing into systems means that you are not as frustrated because your investments don't go away in 4 months. I want to go over just a few examples, and the first is Sharena. And as much as I would like to brag that I have invested into Sharena to the point where she's just an absolute goddess, the real thing here is I have invested into units around her so that she can take on absolute monsters like Winter Claude. This is what I'm talking about. It's a lot of fun to be able to play with units that you like because you've supported units around them. Plus, seeing her take out Winter Claude like that, I don't know if there's a more proud moment I have in Fae. The next example is Gale Force. And this is a unit that everyone really loved in Summer Edelgard, and now they're afraid to use her because of some of the bigger tanks that you have to take on. In this case, Byleth. You notice that all of these units on here are a year old or older, other than attuned Triandra. But I'm still able to utilize what she does because I've done things like given Thor Wings of Mercy 4 so that she flies across the map and is able to take out a unit. Things like that, investments like that, extend your unit's life. So where we are in the game right now, invest into systems, don't invest into units. If you're curious about handling the meta in its current state, I just put out a video about handling legendary Camilla herself. Go check that out. Members, you are amazing and help me do so many things. I appreciate it greatly. Take care and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon.